This is how I left the magazine layout when we last met here. And now we're going to talk about the type. And the first thing I want to talk about is the headline. I happen to have a pretty long headline up here, which actually is fine because it's going to allow me to get a little creative with it. Just so it's easier to see, I'm going to take this and put it on a new page here. So here's my headline. A Disney Imagineer shares why it's important to dream big and what it's like creating unique attractions. How did that sound when I just read it? Kind of monotonous, right? When you just have type, especially a headline, set like this, nothing is very important. Think about how type design is speech, and think about how you talk to your friends or talk to me. Some words you emphasize, some words you de-emphasize, and you want to kind of bring that same energy where when you look at the type, you want to figure out how to make things more important, less important. And I usually build my headlines, even if I'm working in some other programs like InDesign, I tend to still build my headlines in Illustrator because I just find it a little easier to work with. So when you see this phrase, what seems to be the important words in here? And think of a reader. What words are going to get you to really pay attention to this? Anyone want to?
Disney Imagineer.
Disney Imagineer, that's going to attract people. I like Dream Big. I think that might be a good idea. So I'm going to just build this words by words. So I just copied that for the Dream Big. We'll revisit the comma in a minute here. So I think this should be kind of prominent. So what else did we talk about? A Disney Imagineer. So maybe that goes a little bit bigger too. And let's talk about the other information here. Shares why, obviously it's important to the sentence. And then we also need, it's important to. And remember how people read. They tend to read top to bottom, left to right. I don't know why I tend to do this where I kind of create these compositions where it kind of stair steps around here. This isn't going to be the final frontier here. And then finally, let's see, what it's like to dream big and what it's like creating unique. I'm going to come back and revisit this. This is almost like a subhead in here. All right. So I'll put this up here so I always have it. First choice you need to make is fonts. All right. Don't just do everything in the default font that props up, which is Myriad. So I want this to have a little bit of style to it. And remember when I said, a general rule of thumb are 2 or 3 fonts per piece. That doesn't have to be that limiting because what I can do is I'm going to grab a serif font that I like called Dido. And I'm going to start with that. So that's going to be one of my fonts. And I'm going to come up here with a Disney Imagineer. I'll put that in Dido as well. But what I think might be interesting, we talk about how to make things important, less important on here. One of them is size. But another thing you can do is the type style. So I'm actually going to make this a little smaller, but I'm going to come down here under case. I'm going to make Disney Imagineer more important by making it capital letters, but I can make it a little smaller. On my A, I don't want it to all run together, so what I can do with this is use the italic version of it. Maybe I can make it a little bit smaller. Shares Y, it's important too. I'm going to keep those small. And I'll also put this in Dido, but I'll do italic on it, which looks a little bit more conversational on here. And then, like I said, this almost functions like a subhead here. This is my main image here. I'm going to keep all that in the Dido font. What I may do with this is pair it with a different sans serif font. I actually think the one I want to use for this is Futura. Let's see if it's loaded in here. And then what you can do is kind of create architecture here. A Disney Imagineer, shares Y. I tend to kind of snug things together here. This obviously has to lead into Dream Big. Maybe this comes over here. So when I started this, I really had no idea where everything was going to go. But one thing to keep in mind, I have to work this around my image up here. So what I would do is once you kind of have some ideas of fonts in here, I'm going to copy this and go back to my article. We'll move Miss Dubois out of the way for the moment here, and I'm going to just paste my type in and see what works. Now, obviously, the black over this image isn't going to work. Let's see what white looks like. So that's why it's difficult to do thumbnails until you actually get in here. And actually, this is a little difficult to read as well, but I have a solution for that. Do I want to cover all this up? Maybe not. So maybe I'll put this over here and have the big go around the globe here. Maybe this needs to go smaller. Maybe I need to stack this. And maybe this needs to break apart and go a little smaller here. I'll take this down to like 18 point. Creating unique attractions. All right, still not great. Still really hard to read on here. But here's the thing, you're not married. I always told you guys you don't have to use all these images the way you find them. And I'll show you what I'm going to do here. I am going to go back to all these magazine images, and let's find the one that I put in here. Is that it? That is it. So here's the artwork I put in there. My headline's going up here and it's a little difficult to read. What would be great is if I could darken this down a little bit so that I could read it. So what I'm going to do in Photoshop, I'm going to try a couple things here. One of them, you can use these adjustment layers, and I showed you the other day where you can find all these adjustments, but again, you don't want to ever do anything that's going to permanently change the photo. I'm going to do an adjustment layer over here by holding the Option key down. Here's the first thing I'm going to try. And going into this, I'm not exactly sure what's going to work, but I'm going to see if I can darken the image down a little bit. And playing with the curves here. All my type's going up here, right? So I'm trying to make it a little darker. And now it's dark enough so my type would read over here, but the image looks kind of ugly. And here's the beauty of doing this on an adjustment layer. Anytime you do an adjustment layer with special effects, they always come with their own mask on here. And remember, if I want to mask something out, I can paint it with black, or use any of these other tools. And what I can do is use the gradient tool over here, and I'm going to go, and I'm remembering my type kind of comes down here and goes over this. If I do a gradient on here, it will still keep the vibrant color over here. So here's what that mask looks like. I can even add to that. I want to bring some more color back over here because I know the type ends right about here. So I'm changing this to multiply. That allows me to do multiple gradients over this. So here's an option. What I would do is anytime you're doing any special effects on here, remember when I showed you on Monday how it's important to have working files? So what I'm going to do is create a new folder for my working files. These are the ones that are PSD. And I'll be really fancy and call this alt background. And put it in the Photoshop formula. So there are ways you can alter the art here, and I can work with everyone individually. Now what I'm going to do is flatten this and create a new, remember I made the magazine tips here the other day? I think I did. What color did I do for us? Blue. Blue? So much for that. All right. So this could be one option. If I come back here to my original art, if you use the white arrow and click on this, there you can see the image. And to save time, if you come up here to links, this will show you everything that is linked in the article, all the images I made. If I come up here and do relink, and now let me find too many layers in here. I should find my alt background. So there it put a little bit of the darker image in there. And then I can move this around. And then what did I tell you you should never do? Drop shadows. So I've got white type here, and I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to paste it right on top, but I'm going to make it black. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a little bit of a drop shadow. Didn't he just say never do that? I said try and avoid it. But sometimes I don't want to keep you here for 2 hours, so for time's sake, I'm going to take my black text here and drop it behind here. You don't have to do everything. Again, it's the main words here. Let's go backwards again. There we go. So you may have to try different solutions in here to get it to work. And then I'm going to take Miss Dubois' name here. And let's put her in white and use the same font that I've used in the headline. Maybe I'll do the bold version of it. And again, this doesn't have to be prominent. You want to give her her due here. You know, it could go there. You could put her name up here if you wanted to. You always want to probably do it below the headline here, but you want to make sure she gets the credit, or he or she gets the credit. So I've got the headline. I used 2 fonts with it. Now what I want to do is talk about the body text in here.